Health and Community Services, and I am facilitating this session today. And I have Jamie Comstock along with me here from Bangor Public Health as well, my co-conspirator in all matters. And so she's going to assist me today, and she's going to be monitoring the chat. And I would love to hear from you in the chat, and we want to be able to entertain comments and answer questions. I will do questions at the end, and it's a little bit distracting for me to look at the chat throughout the presentation. So Jamie's going to take that over on my behalf, and she's going to come on in if there are things that she thinks would be really helpful to address in the moment, and otherwise we will get to those things at the end. So with that said, I am going to share my screen and we're going to get started. And I also want to let you know that this is kind of a low pressure session today. I'm not going to ask anything of you. You can kind of just sit back and relax. There really won't be much interactivity. And I just hope you hear some information that's interesting and potentially helpful to you. Let me see. How's that looking, Jamie? Are we where we want to be? You're muted.
I think we are. Let me.
Great. Can you see my slides?
Yes, I can see everything and it looks good.
Great, thank you. And I see people are still coming into the waiting room, so are you noticing that as well?
I am, and I will let them in. Yep.
So much. So our presentation today is called Memes and Quarantinis, and I'm going to be talking about alcohol prevention in the era of COVID-19. As I said, my name is Robin Carr. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I work at Bangor Public Health and Community Services. And my primary role is the prevention of substance use disorders, and for a long time that's looked like primary prevention with a youth focus. But what we're noting now is sort of population level changes related to alcohol. And so this is a really timely topic. I hope you'll find that it's relevant for you in your own lives and your families. And also when it comes to working with parents and students, this is just something that I think there'll be something for everyone in this session. So since the session's called Memes and Quarantinis, I want to tell you that we are, I'm going to show you plenty of memes. So I would love to thank all of the creative people out there who are witty and make these really funny memes, without whom this presentation would not be possible. And I thought this one was kind of funny, and it applies to obviously folks in the field of education, but I think it applies to everyone, that we're kind of drowning and trying to survive all the while other onlookers are encouraging us to pay attention to our self-care. So today's session isn't about self-care specifically, but I do hope and think that you might find something in it that will help you improve your own wellness and perhaps that of your family and maybe even the community. The other thing we're going to do today is we're going to talk about alcohol in social media and in our social norms. And so this is something that was really interesting to me that I saw the emergence of right after COVID-19 kicked off. Somebody, again, really clever and witty, coined the term Quarantinis, and then it took off like wildfire. And people across the internet came up with these very clever recipes and images, and I'm sure that many of you have seen them. And it was sort of fascinating to watch it all unfold, and we're going to talk about some of that today. And then last, we're also going to talk about health benefits. And I apologize, this meme is a little blurry, but it was so funny that I thought I had to share it. So I'm going to share with you some of the health benefits and overall benefits of drinking less alcohol. There are many of us who have a relationship with alcohol. About 70% of people in the United States drink alcohol. Of course, some people don't for personal, cultural, health, whatever reasons that they have. But for 70% of us, we have sort of this ongoing relationship with alcohol in our lives. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and how moderating and drinking less alcohol can have an impact on your health and overall self. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is how to reset our relationships with alcohol if you choose to do that. And not just at an individual level, although that's a big part of this, but also sort of at a community level. We all have a relationship with alcohol and are a part of the culture. If you think about it, alcohol is really the only substance in our society that we have to explain not using, right? Which is kind of interesting to think about, and even more so these days. So that's where we're going to go. And my hopes for today's session are that I will be able to inspire you to define your own relationship status with alcohol and inspire you to reset that as desired, if needed, in your life. And then also, my largest hope for today's session is that no one's going to feel bad about anything that we're talking about. More than anything, this whole year has been a story about coping, and all of our coping mechanisms, good, bad, otherwise, we've been getting through. And I just want to affirm for you that today's talk is not about making anyone feel bad for any situation they have found themselves in. So I'm going to start off by talking about how environments influence drinking behavior. I think it's really easy to assume that alcohol use is all about personal choice and personal responsibility. And while there are individual choices and we have within ourselves our own biology, drinking behavior is really a complex interplay between environment and people. And I'm going to illustrate that for you today using the social ecology model as related to the donut. So my favorite donut in the whole wide world is a Bismarck donut. And I have recently found out that it is the donut with the most calories on the Dunkin' Donuts donut menu. So of course it's the one that I like the most. And I'm going to walk you through how environments shape my choices about whether or not I'm going to eat Bismarck donuts. So this is the social ecology model. It's something that we use in public health. You might be familiar with it. It's a real helpful tool. And so I'm just going to, I'm going to walk through a scenario where let's imagine that I'm going to try to eat fewer Bismarck donuts, which in fact I am. So that's a real thing. So I've made this choice for myself that I'm going to kind of work on my eating behaviors, that I'm not going to eat as many Bismarck donuts. My personal biology is that I was born with a Bismarck gene, that it is in there. My child has a variant of the gene. It's the glazed chocolate frosted donut. So it's not quite the same gene, but it's in the same family. So it's very ingrained. I come from a long line of donut eaters. And so I really, 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 really love them. So, but at the same time, I want to fit into my pants. And the Robin look is over, and it's been over for a long time. So if I go to a store and try to buy a pair of pants in a bigger size, they're just not the pants that I want. So I need to fit into the pants that I've got. And so I am really motivated to eat fewer Bismarck donuts. But, you know, the story doesn't end with me. It also includes my family. And I mentioned my child who has the chocolate frosted donut gene, and also my husband who comes from a long line of donut eaters and who also love donuts. And I'll tell you that he and I kind of bonded initially over him bringing me donuts and us eating donuts together. So that's kind of a thing. So if I wake up in the morning and I say, here we go, Robin, here's a Friday, I am not going to make it Donut Friday, and he gets up in the morning and walks up to the bakery, which is 45 seconds door to door from my house, Frank's Bakery, which is very, very dangerous. He brings back some donuts. It's going to be a little bit harder for me. My resolve might waver, right? And then I might go into my office and I see a mass email from the building saying, happy Friday, everyone. I brought in donuts for everybody today. I just thought we had a long week, and they're in the break room if you'd like to go and help yourself to one. So again, I'm motivated, but my environment is really not supporting me at this point making the choice I want to make. There are donuts everywhere in my world. And I'll also say that where our building is, 103 Texas Avenue in Bangor, we are flanked by 2 donut shops 1 mile away. There's a Tim Hortons over on Audlin Road, and there's a Dunkin' Donuts on Union Street. And I know how long it takes me to get to both of those places. And I'll also mention that the donuts there are pretty cheap. Like you can get yourself a donut and some coffee for a really reasonable fee, way cheaper than, for instance, going to a place and getting a salad at any of the restaurants around. And also there's a drive-through, so it's easier for me to do that. So as you begin to see, it's sort of like Yes, it's my choice, but there are a lot of things in my environment that are sort of influencing my choices. And then if you blow it out really big, you start to think about what's happening at the law, society, policy level, things that are being talked about in our culture. I think there's been pretty broad acceptance for very liberal donut eating in this last year. It's like, yes, we're experiencing a pandemic. Go get yourself a half dozen. You deserve it. We've made it to Friday. So there's stuff just going on at all levels that are influencing my choices around donut eating. So I would like you to apply that and think about that as it relates to alcohol for our purposes today. So what we know is that environments shape choices, and there are particular things in our environment that influences drinking. Norms, culture, and laws is a very big one. So in the state of Maine, we have laws that allow alcohol to be sold in convenience stores, in grocery stores, in big box stores. There are some states that you have to go to an agency liquor store to get alcohol, or a packy, as some people call them, or I've learned them to be known some places. And in those states, interestingly enough, the ones where alcohol is less available, the population drinking rates are lower. And we live in a state, and New England as a whole has higher drinking rates, but Maine has had higher drinking rates than many other places in the country for a long time. And one of the reasons is that broad availability. Also, price and placement has a big role to play in it too. So as you can see, you can get like a 6-pack of these hard sodas for $9.99. That works out to be like $1.66 a container. You can go into a convenience store and many times get like a tall boy of a hard soda or a beer, and it's 99 cents or $1.29. Whereas getting a water or the Perrier that I just showed you was $1.69 or $1.99 at the store. So oftentimes you'll find that alcoholic beverages are even cheaper than those that don't contain alcohol. And price is a big deal for adults, and it's a very, very big deal for youth as well. So the cheaper the products tend to be, the more we tend to see both youth and adult use. And we haven't increased our tobacco tax in quite a long time in Maine, so we have really relatively low prices of alcohol. So it just kind of sets the stage for a hearty amount of alcohol use. Another thing I wanted to share with you is that adult drinking rates dovetail with youth drinking rates. So we see this across the country. Where there are high adult drinking rates, there are high youth drinking rates. And Maine is one of those places where that is true. So it is very much the case that reflecting on our own drinking behavior and our own adult drinking culture plays a significant role in whether or not youth will drink. And so it's a really important concept for all of us adults, and especially those in the field of education who work with youth and families to just know about. And then there's exposure to alcohol marketing, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. Alcohol companies spend a tremendous amount of money marketing their products, and that's kicked up during COVID-19, and they do that because it's tremendously effective. It's known that advertising exposure to a particular brand of alcohol makes a person 3 times more likely to use that specific brand. So it's very effective, and it's incredibly pervasive in our culture. And what people mostly don't realize about alcohol marketing is that the alcohol industry sort of regulates itself when it comes to marketing. And that's a little bit different than tobacco. So for tobacco companies, they got into a lot of trouble. And they, as a result of the master tobacco settlement, they were barred from doing certain kinds of advertising. And so their advertising is regulated in that way, and that's not the case when it comes to alcohol. So it's just important for folks to understand that distinction. So I wanted to draw some similarities for you about what we're seeing right now with drinking and what we've seen happen in the past with other crisis events, and also talk about some differences. So I would probably submit that any time in our life that there has been a time of crisis, that we've seen substance use rates increase. However, these are the particular events that have been studied, so these are the ones that I'm going to talk about. We saw alcohol use rates increase following Hurricane Katrina, the Oklahoma City bombings, and after 9/11. And we've seen alcohol rates increase during COVID-19, and I'm going to share that data with you in a little bit. So there are some similarities that kind of cut across all of these things. So one of them is, of course, a traumatic crisis-like events. Another similarity is that substances have been used as a mechanism for coping. Another commonality is that we've seen health disparities illuminated once again. So we've seen just sort of a deepening of pre-existing inequalities that people experienced, and certainly, you know, that's something that was quite significant during Hurricane Katrina amongst a particular population of people. A bit less so with the Oklahoma City bombings and 9/11, where we saw the impact being among those who lived in close proximity to the events, and also those who were first responders in those situations. So those are kind of the broad similarities, but then we've got some differences, and I'm going to walk you through those and why it's important to think about them. So one difference is just the number of people who were affected by those events and who are affected by COVID-19. So we saw drinking rates increase among these particular groups of folks who were directly affected by these events in the past. And what we're seeing now is a broad population impact because we're all experiencing COVID-19. So the increase in drinking rates is occurring across our population. And that's really important to think about. Another thing to note is that we've seen particular groups of people disproportionately affected during this time, and they're not going to come as any surprise to you about who that is. Caregivers. Among just 2/3 of people are caregivers in the United States, and they have been disproportionately affected by this crisis for reasons I don't even have to say because we know about all of them. As I said see my coworker who's sitting from home today and who has 2 young children who are there, and what this year has all been like for those of us who are caregivers of children, caregivers of older adults. And then also women have been disproportionately affected as well. Many women are caregivers, but women have experienced some additional factors that have played into how things have affected them. Another thing that is a difference is that there wasn't a large event and then that followed a slow return to normal or a slow return to a changed state that remained concrete. What's been happening for us is things are changing every day, all the time, and all we can say is that we can't really be sure what our day is going to be like when we get up in the morning, because you could get a call that you're going remote for the day or for the week, or that you're a close contact, or that we're experiencing another wave, or that vaccines are coming or not coming as planned. All we can say is that things will be different. And if there are folks here who haven't seen, Chris McLaughlin from Northern Light Acadia Hospital did an amazing presentation at last year's Maine Child Welfare Conference, and it's available on YouTube, and Jamie's going to put it in the chat for everyone. If you haven't seen it, it is a must watch, particularly for anyone who works with youth and families or has a family. So I think that's pretty much all of us. And he talked about stress and the impact of COVID-19 and how to deal with that. And he talks about this issue so beautifully about why it's so problematic for us and what's been happening to us as a society and people, because we haven't been able to return to a reliable state. We can't work through the stages of grief because things keep changing on us. So that's just a great thing to watch, and will be helpful and add value to the content I'm sharing today, but also just generally speaking. Another difference is there's been no relief. And up until quite recently, we just never knew. We weren't quite sure when relief would come. So here are some other differences. When it came to the, Jamie's laughing. There's more fun for you to come, I promise. So some other differences are that our alcohol normalization culture has built to the point of crescendo before COVID-19 even happened. So we saw this establishment of what some have deemed the mommy wine culture, and that was and is absolutely everywhere, portrayed in memes. I recently saw a Saturday Night Live sketch where A.D. Bryant is receiving all of these wine signs as gifts for her birthday. It's not real appropriate for me to show you today, but it would be fun for you to go and watch. And it's funny, but it's also really true. So we have, as a culture, really normalized alcohol to this point where it's almost unbelievable at this point, and we have a lot of tools at our disposal with social media to be able to share these messages and all that kind of thing. We've also seen alcohol marketing and alcohol availability continue to increase. This is a photo from up near the checkout counter at Walmart a few months ago here in Bangor, and just the availability of alcohol and how that's changed. At one point in time, alcohol really could only be found in like the back corner of Walmart. And we've just seen it become more, alcohol everywhere, just become a bit more available in a way that's placed in stores, the way that it's marketed. Think about how much more readily you might pick up a little thing of Fireball if you're up by the register, as opposed to thinking to walk back to the corner of the store to find it. And we also see it kind of paired with childlike treats, candy. I know we all like Whoppers. I like Whoppers too. But this is a really bright, colorful display. It's at little kid height. So we see availability. We see product placement that kids see as well, and that's been continuing to increase over time. And we're just kind of we're letting everybody do that, I guess, you know. And again, more normalization in our culture. This is from a few years ago, and it was something local in Bangor where an organization was hosting a Santa-themed pub crawl, and the objective was to dress up like Santa Claus and do a pub crawl through downtown Bangor, and it was to benefit a youth organization. So what we see is just alcohol is just a normal part of what we do every day. It's paired with things that are for youth. In this case, it's paired with Santa, who is typically associated with youth. And the event itself was a benefit for youth, and we've seen a lot of that lately. And I'm not placing judgment on those things. Alcohol is a good way to raise money. It's a concrete, solid strategy to raise money. So I think that's just something for us to keep in mind. But when we start to see even things that are youth-serving organizations or youth-related things tied to alcohol, those are maybe some things we want to be paying attention to. But again, this is part of this building to a crescendo of the normalization of alcohol that we've seen. And this is a picture that I took several years ago when my now high school student was in Hannaford with me one day. And he had just come out, and we were walking through the store, and he got so excited when he saw this 6-pack of beer that had a pride flag on it, and walked right up to it and showed it to me. And as a prevention specialist and as a mom, my heart just sank in that moment, because I had always, working in the field of public health, I'd heard for many years that the pride flag was a really important symbol for the LGBTQIA community. But until I knew that from my household, from having a child that is part of that community, I really didn't know it. I didn't know it. That day I knew it, and it's been reinforced for me a million times since then. And just as a little side note, now that I know what an important symbol it is, that's why, if you've noticed, I have a little pride flag in that I keep on my bookshelf. I do a lot of Zoom meetings, and for me, that's just a little way to be affirming in the work that I do, and also by sharing my pronouns with you, both as part of my name on my Zoom screen and also when I introduce myself. But these really important symbols that we've seen, I don't want to digress too much, but these really important symbols for the community have been, appropriated or have been tagged with alcohol, and that's a concern. We've seen in the past there were very aggressive marketing tactics that were used in the tobacco industry to market to the LGBTQIA community. They actually had a name for it. It was called Project Scum. And you can read more about that if you have interest in doing it. And so we are very kind of watchful of that in our world, looking at these industries that promote substances of addiction, marketing to groups who already experience health disparities, and the LGBTQIA+ community is one of them. So we had all this building. We had all this building normalization. We had marketing to certain groups of people who were already disproportionately affected. And then the pandemic hit, and pretty much drinking alcohol seemed like the only thing that was going to be a cure or any sort of make us feel better strategy during that time. And there were so many fun and interesting, funny memes that came along during that time. This is Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec, who's somebody who's known for drinking alcohol. So I was just looking up on the internet the other day. I'd kind of forgotten about this, but the World Health Organization had to put out a series of statements and fact sheets, making sure that people understood that alcohol would not be protective against COVID-19, because for a while, like, that was going around. People thought that. So I kind of forgot that that was even a thing that occurred, but it did. It did. So some more differences to think about are that alcohol has been used during this time as a way to connect with each other. We felt so disconnected, and so pretty early on, one of the things that became in fashion was to have Zoom happy hours or Zoom cocktail hours. And it was a way that we felt like we could still be together and share an experience together, and alcohol was a big part of that. And of course, the alcohol industry is well aware of it, and it's amazing how many products are for sale right now that are marketing specifically to this happy hour, virtual happy hour culture. We've also had some other interesting things go on. So I live in a house with anywhere from 4 to 6 people, and at the time of stay-at-home orders, it also included a dog, a cat, a bird, and 2 hamsters in separate cages. And there are times that I just need to go to TJ Maxx, and I need to look at the pretty displays. I just need to be there, and they need to not be at my house where all those things are going on and they're not as pretty. And during COVID-19, we lost that. We lost all our third spaces. We lost our ability to go to the gym, to go take a look at TJ Maxx, go to each other's go to friends' houses, socialize, get together. So there was an element of how do we fill our days, and a long day stretched out in front of you kind of translated to how early in the day can maybe I start drinking, because that became a way that you could add some intrigue to the day. Make things a little sparkle, make things a little different, or make things feel a little bit less. I did this presentation yesterday for a coworker as a little practice run, and she reminded me that while my children are older, her experience of having small children is not at all that she was searching for a way to fill up her days. But her experience was long days stretched out in front of her where she was just going, trying to figure out how to keep 2 small kids entertained, and she couldn't and none of the things that were previously available to her were in place. You couldn't even go to the playground during that time. So they went on a lot of walks, but it was just really hard. And she just said basically, like, getting to 5 o'clock in the afternoon and it was time to make dinner, it was like, relief, I can have a drink while I make dinner, or I can have a drink after dinner. So it just became a way to cope, a way to feel better for a little while, and that's really real. Also, our social contracts with each other really changed during this time, did they not? So sweatpants are really okay anytime now. And drinking became okay anytime. It's really fun to go and read on Twitter all the little tweets. People are so creative, but there are tons of ones about sweatpants, and I thought these 2 were cute in particular. I'm going to give you a chance to read them. So yeah, things got a little relaxed. You can have a 6-pack of Bismarcks. You can wear your sweatpants. You can start drinking at 10 o'clock in the morning. We wanted to just make that okay for everybody, and we did. And then, as I mentioned earlier, price and availability influences drinking. And during the last year, the state put in place some temporary rules that allowed restaurants to have to-go cocktails as a way to sort of recoup some of the revenue they were losing from having to close their businesses or move to a to-go only model. And what we know about that, right now this is moving toward a more permanent status, so it's legislation people can speak with their legislators about if they choose. And so from a public health perspective, one of the things we want to be real careful about is increasing the number of ways that alcohol gets out into the community, because again, what we see is increased use, and not just among adults, but among youth. So this is just something to keep our eye on. So here are the questions that really caused me to take this on as a topic I want to talk with people about for a while, probably a long time. These kind of core questions that have come up as our learning about what's happening during COVID-19. We're going to keep learning about it. Our learning from what we saw during those crisis events in the past and how we dealt with alcohol. There are these kind of central questions, and one is, how is it that we cope? And again, I said this presentation isn't about self-care, but I do think as a society, we're going to get to a place where we need to really think about this question. How is it we cope when times are tough? Because times have been tough and times are going to be tough again. And so that's a reason I'm talking about this. The other reason is that we're not sure if these changes will be permanent. So when it comes to 9/11, they actually did a follow-up study 5 years later. Actually, I think it was 6 years later. They did a follow-up study. So they looked at the people who had been directly impacted by 9/11, particularly people who were living in the Manhattan area, and found that they had had a tremendous increase in binge drinking. And when they went back 6 years later, those changes had remained. So these changes that we're experiencing could be permanent. This vast increase in alcohol use might not go away. So we really need to be thinking about how we pull it back, or how we could pull it back. And then this lingering question of health disparities. How can we protect people experiencing health disparities? We know some of this stuff. More of it is coming into focus. There's always going to be this problem unless we figure out some strategies of how to address this, that when we experience times of crisis, those who are already in difficult situations are going to have a harder time responding, bouncing back, bouncing forward, and that's just not okay. So we're going to need to work through that. So I wanted to share with you 3 slides on data. That's it. They're very simple. But I wanted to let you know just what the drinking rates were. This was prior to COVID-19. Surveys in 2019, both among youth and adults in the state of Maine. So past 30-day use is a measure that we use in our public health word that talks just about current use. It's a measure of current use. So in Maine in 2019, about a quarter of high school students reported current use of alcohol, and 57% of adults reported. And this was pre-pandemic numbers, so just kind of keep that in mind. They've delayed some of the survey implementation that normally would have happened in the spring of this year to the fall. So we'll be very interested to have new data and see what we're dealing with now. And as I mentioned, we know that there are certain groups who experience health disparities and who are disproportionately affected by substance use. So the LGBT community is one of them, and it's LGBTQ. I'm just LGBT because that's what's been. Those were the groups measured in the study, and that's why it's not a more inclusive or broad representation there. But we do see these elevated rates, and the reasons behind them are both that there's an aggressive amount of marketing and a sense of belonging that people feel when it comes to alcohol. For a long time, I've had people tell me who are in the LGBTQIA community that bars were really one of the first places that was really accepting and affirming, and that continues to be true. So that's part of it. And then also it's this minority stress that people experience, this sense of belonging, not belonging, this sense of isolation. So we do see these higher rates among this group. And here's the COVID effect. And this was from several months ago. They did a national study and they noticed that there's been a 14% overall increase in drinking. So across the population, we're seeing a 14% increase in drinking rates. So just think about that as it relates to what we know to be true from 2019 about our drinking rates in Maine. And drinking rates are important. I don't think I've said this before, but I think everybody knows that while a lot of us have a relationship with alcohol, it can be can have a tremendously damaging impact on individuals, families, and our community. Some people run into a lot of problems with alcohol use. We can't predict who they will be necessarily. And so when we see these increases in drinking rates, it should be of concern to all of us. I mentioned caregivers, and that's the 19% bucket there. You see the largest increase that we've observed has been in this age range of folks who are in this caregiver group, the 30 to 59-year-olds, where we've seen a 19% increase. And then I have a couple of things for women here. And women have experienced a 17% increase, and they've also increased we've seen a tremendous increase in heavy drinking among women. And there's also evidence to show that we're seeing new emergence of alcohol-related problems, women running into problems. And I just read something the other day. NPR did a story on this new emergence of liver disease in young women. And they profiled a woman who was the 2019 Kentucky Teacher of the Year. So this is certainly something for us to pay attention to. And women also have we have a few things stacked against us in that we don't process alcohol quite as efficiently as men do. We don't have as many of the enzymes that men do to break down alcohol. It stays with us a little bit longer. Women can tend to run into problems with alcohol use, risky behavior translating to use disorders a bit more readily than men can in some situations. So again, something to pay attention to. And especially with everything in the news, we're hearing about everything that women are going through, all the women who are leaving the workforce, something to keep on your radar screen. So I'm going to stop talking about science and data so much now, and I'm going to wrap up the last bit of our presentation today by sharing information about myself. I'm going to share some tools with you about how to define your own relationship with alcohol and perhaps reset it as desired and if needed. So this is me, and this is my family, my two kids. And I wanted to just share with you that I am one of the women who's increased their drinking during COVID-19. And I am a person who every day I go to work, and my one job is to focus on preventing substance use disorders. And I know a lot about it, and I work on it every day. And that information and that work experience didn't help me during this time. I went from somebody who would once in a while have a glass of wine, or maybe on the weekend have a glass of wine, to someone for whom it was a foregone conclusion that I would have a drink, probably 2 drinks every single night. I would definitely drink more than that on the weekend. And I actually can't remember, like from April to probably December, I don't really remember any days where I wasn't drinking. And I think, I could tell you a lot about my personal experiences. We all have personal experiences, and I know they're all varied, they're all challenging. And just to say that I experienced them myself, and I struggled to cope, and I still struggle to cope with how everything has been in my life. But toward the end of December, what I'll say is that I'm borrowing this great analogy from somebody here in our office. I want to feel like a crisp head of lettuce, folks. I want to feel like just you can imagine that would be. And toward the end of December, I started to feel instead like a crisp head of lettuce like I wanted to feel, and instead kind of like a boiled hot dog. I just didn't feel good. I felt puffy, I felt gross. I was tired all the time. I was sad. I I would come into work on Monday morning, I was tired and the week hadn't even started. I would wake up in the morning and I would think, how can I do this again? I'm not sure how I'm gonna make it through the day again. Something wasn't working for me. And I came into work on Monday, January 3rd, and two of my coworkers were talking about this thing called dry January. I hadn't heard of it before. And they said like it was a big thing and people were quitting drinking for the month of January, and they were gonna talk about it as they were gonna share it on Facebook as a potential strategy for people. And I thought, you know, maybe I could try that. Maybe I could see if that would work for me. And so that's what I did. I decided to apply that strategy. I wasn't sure if alcohol was causing the problems. In fact, I was thinking, oh, you know, I'm in my 40s now. I've been going through a rough year with stress. Maybe this is just like how I feel now. Maybe I just need to adjust to the fact that everyone, once they turn 40 and they go through stressful situations, they feel like a boiled hot dog and it never goes back again. So I just wanted to see. I wasn't really sure. And I also wasn't really sure what my relationship with alcohol was. I felt like I had a lot more control of it in the past, but I wasn't certain of it. So I just thought, let's just see. Let's just try this. I'll just do a little experiment here. So it was, I'm going to tell you about the dumpster fire a little bit that occurred, because I want to be real about it. Another person in our office talks about how when she's eating bad, sometimes it's like it's a dumpster fire. And it was kind of like a dumpster fire in my world for a little while. So this is just to give you this is a visual of what this is that I did. I did Dry January. I downloaded a Dry January app, which is free in the App Store. It's made possible by Alcohol Change. Jamie's going to put a link to alcoholchange.org in the chat. They are actually from the UK, but their tools are great. They've got a website. They've got the app. You can do a Dry January. They also have a Sober Spring. Just a bunch of tools for you to sort of think of, like, cut back on drinking or reset the relationship a little bit. So that's what I did. I downloaded the app. And as you can see, here it is really filled in for me. I did drink on Friday the 1st and January the 2nd. So I didn't achieve the whole Dry January, which kind of bugs me because I'm a perfectionist, but that's okay. It's all right. I'll live. So what I want to tell you is a little bit about the dumpster fire business about this. I want to particularly draw your attention to the 8th, 9th, and 10th of January in my world. So it was kind of easy for me starting out, and I was doing it during the work week. And so I'm busy during the work week, and I've got a lot going on, and I'm working with my kids to make sure they have what they need for school and dinners and all that. And so my day was pretty filled up, and it felt pretty easy, and I thought, sure, I can do this. So this is kind of a calendar of my month. So the first few days are like, this is no big deal, this is great, this is awesome, I'm going to be able to do it. And then the weekend rolled around, and I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? What have I done? I'm not going to make it. This is terrible. I didn't know how I was going to make it through the weekend. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how to fill up my time. My body felt kind of bad. I felt really tired. I wasn't feeling great. This is a sort of a calendar idea that I borrowed from the Whole30. So this is kind of similar to the Whole30 diet experience, if anybody's ever done that, where you only eat beets, nuts, fruits, vegetables. And a bunch of people did these funny calendars about what the experience is like. So you start out, it feels kind of easy. Then you start to get into it a little bit more, and you're like, oh my gosh, my life is going to end. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then by the end of the month, you feel so darn good. It's like you have tiger blood. And that's really what happened to me. So I went through the whole month, and I just felt so darn good that I have really kept up with this in a pretty big way. So here's how I felt so darn good. And it is founded in science, just so you know. It's not just unique to me that I'm feeling better, and I'm pretty sure it's because I'm drinking less. So while I am not Ken Jennings and could never win Jeopardy, I will definitely say my mental clarity has improved, and there's a solid body of evidence to support that. If you have 5 drinks, the cognitive impacts of that, the brain fog, can last for 3 days. I was not giving myself any breaks from alcohol any day. It wasn't that I was impaired by alcohol during the day, but alcohol was in my system. And it never got a chance to come out. And on the weekend, I was having 5 drinks for sure, and I was certainly experiencing brain fog. And now I feel way more clear. Weight loss. So maybe something else that other folks are interested in here, that there were a few pounds that I was having a really hard time dealing with. And since I have walked back my drinking, things have really transformed. And it's not just because of the way that our body processes alcohol, which is problematic, and it has an impact on metabolism, but it's also because your inhibitions are lowered and your judgment changes after you start drinking, and you can just like slam a bag of chips after you've had a few glasses of wine, and it doesn't really bother you too much. So it's kind of a double whammy in that way. Better nutrient absorption. Our friend Jack LaLanne, have you ever seen this infomercial, The Power Juicer? I used to love that. So when I was feeling like a boiled hot dog, the first things I tried to do to fix it were to just really improve my nutrition and get back to cleaner eating and fewer Bismarcks and all that kind of stuff. But what I didn't know is that when you're drinking alcohol, alcohol actually kills the cells in your stomach that help you process nutrients efficiently. So if you're taking the time to healthfully eat, you're negating some of those impacts if you've got alcohol in your system. My sleep improved. This is my favorite author, Nora Ephron. She wrote this book, and then some of it she gives some good life advice. And she said, if you're wondering what's keeping you up at night, it's the second glass of wine. And isn't that the truth? So alcohol affects our sleep in a couple of different ways. You can read about that. I'm not going to get into it too much, but it affects our REM sleep and our slow wave sleep. And so what we usually experience is it will knock us out in the beginning and then we wake up. And I was definitely experiencing that. And so I was not getting the sleep that I should have been getting. And again, I think that contributed to the mental clarity that I was losing and the brain fog that I was having. Also, your skin. So in addition to a boiled hot dog, many people around here heard me lament about how my face looked like the Crypt Keeper. And also my sister received many, many text messages of me with very close-up pictures of my face like this, where I was circling different spots and saying, this is wrong with my skin now and what I'm going to do about it. And I was shopping for all sorts of products to deal with redness and deal with aging and deal with dryness and gray. I kind of got a little bit gray for a while there. I swear, I was looking like the Crypt Keeper. And now I definitely could not be featured in a Neutrogena ad as Jennifer Garner could, but I totally have seen improvements in my skin. And again, this is a known impact. So the skin alcohol does a bunch of different things to our skin that we don't want to have happen. And it also dehydrates us, so it makes the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. If you're somebody who cares about that, it elevates the appearance of that stuff. Again, you can get redness and blotchiness and dryness, and so it can just kind of overall improve the quality of your skin if you drink less. Also, I said this to my kids the other day. I'm just going to say it, folks. The alcohol disrupts your digestion. And I mean, I was doing okay, but now I'm great. Now I'm beautiful. Now you could set your watch by it, folks. And that's what we want. We want to wake up in the morning and we want to just be light as a feather to hop into our day. And alcohol certainly plays a role in how well that happens for us. Again, you can read more about that on your own, but things are going well for me in that arena. Also, the Dry January app says I have saved $413. What they don't know is that I would buy really, really, really cheap liquor. So it's probably half that, but I would say I was probably spending $20 a week on alcohol, and that's a lot of money. And so you definitely can see a savings in your wallet, and the Dry January app is neat that it tracks that for you, and it also tracks calories, kind of fun to follow along with. Also, my mood just got way better. And this is a funny meme about mood, and this is probably not as extreme as I felt, but me accusing my cat of cuddling with other people when I come home after bottomless brunch. So it wasn't quite that bad, But alcohol really does affect mood, and while it does make us feel better for a little while, after that initial good relief feeling, it is a central nervous system depressant, and it will make us feel down. And it also can disrupt neurotransmitters and serotonin. And so it can lead to these sort of peaks and valleys in our mood. So I definitely have felt more mood stabilization. And as I said, I was really sad. And I think a lot of us have been really sad. And while I won't say that everything is perfect in my world now, what I just generally feel like is that I'm hardier and stronger and better to take it all on. And I really sincerely think it's because I reset my relationship with alcohol a bit. Everything was hard, and everything is still hard, but things were getting a lot harder for me, and I think drinking was a core reason why. And here's another thing. Here's my husband. This is us out snowshoeing. He started drinking less too. And that's pretty cool. And I didn't say, hey, you're going to do dry January with me, because that's not the way to a happy relationship, as we all know. But just by virtue of me doing that a little bit less, and again, environment shapes choices. It wasn't really happening in the house as much. I wasn't buying it and bringing it home. It was just happening less, and it was happening less for him. So that's a kind of a cool thing too. So we have just a couple of minutes left, and I want to just wrap up by showing you the resources that I've talked about during this session, and a couple that I haven't shared for you. So one is alcoholscreening.org, and Jamie is going to type that in the chat. If you're somebody that's interested in resetting your relationship with alcohol, this is a nice tool that either can be used in conjunction with Dry January or alone. It's quick. You go online, you type in a few things. It will give you personalized results about drinking. If you just kind of want to know, is what I'm doing in a healthy range? Is it not? How could I cut back? Like what are my options here? It's really good. And I also saw that they have a text message service that they're doing now, and that's pretty neat. And this is free, and it's anonymous. No one's gonna track it or know that that's what you're doing. Dry January, I mentioned, alcoholchange.org.uk. Dry January, Sober Spring, you can just track your drinking days and have access to all of their free tools. There are also low-risk drinking guidelines, and I didn't fill this out, and I'm not going to talk about this. It's a total blank slide, and I'm not going to talk about them. But there are actually low-risk drinking guidelines, just as there are nutrition guidelines, dietary guidelines, and there are physical activity guidelines. There are actually low-risk drinking guidelines. Learn about those, know about those. If you follow the 0, 1, 2, 3 low-risk drinking guidelines, this is something we teach in our youth curriculum, Prime for Life. If you know what those are and you follow those rules, you have a lower likelihood of running into problems with alcohol use. So my takeaways really are this. I want you to, again, have the tools that could be helpful to you in defining your relationship with alcohol. Another takeaway is for you to be thinking about whether or not that relationship is helping you, hurting you. Maybe you don't know, maybe it's neutral, but just try to gain some awareness about that. And again, reset if necessary. Another thing I'd like to ask you to do is share these resources with a friend. This is how I changed my drinking behavior, because I heard some coworkers talking about it at work, and so spread the word. Also think about norms and culture. We're all contributing to that. So do I want to share that funny meme? Or maybe I don't want to do that because of what impact it might have on all of our broad acceptance of alcohol everywhere we go. Also, understand the policy landscape and think about those things like to-go alcohol and different policies and raising the price of alcohol, because we're all citizens too at the end of the day. Lastly, I want to tell you about Bangor Public Health. We've got a cutoff now. I'm going to hop off this session in 30 seconds. But I work at Bangor Public Health and Community Services. You can find us at bangorpublichealth.org. Please feel free to reach out to us. We have a wonderful array of services. Many are available to schools, and they're for free. We do a lot of fun stuff. This session is going to be recorded so people can watch it later. I have colleagues who are also doing wonderful sessions today who are recorded, and you can watch those at different times. We have a great suite of services to offer schools, both for youth and for teachers and for administration and for parents as well. And here is my contact information. And if you have any questions or comments that we didn't have time to get to, please feel free to type them in the chat right now, and I will save it and get back to you, or please feel free to email me, and I will respond to you. And also check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you.
If you have questions, you should email Robin, because we have to give up our Zoom. So I'm sorry, we have someone else coming in on this line.
Bye.